How's everyone stood alcoholic?
Stewart.
It's weird actually, because like this whole week I haven't really thought about today at all. I'm actually pretty chilled. I think though, like, the only thing I thought about this morning is like, I don't know what I'm going to come and share about, because like, I don't know, like a year ago I had all the answers, but today like I truly don't. The fact that I'm still sober after 3 years, for me, I can't explain it, you know. What I do know is that this program works. It's as simple as that. Last year I kind of thought I had all the answers, and this year I've been amazed that like I've managed to get through dealing with me. Like, I think despite myself I still sit here today, and I think that's a miracle. So yeah, I'll start off with a little bit of background. Not that I think that it has anything to do with me being an alcoholic. You know, what I've come to realize from sitting in these meetings is that, you know, if we look around us, there's people from all different walks of life, different experiences, but we're still sitting in the same room. So I don't think any of my experiences as a kid or anything like that is what would have impacted that. But the way that I responded to those experiences, for me, is what makes me an alcoholic, you know. I don't think I had a traumatic childhood. The only thing that happened when I was 4 years old, my mum passed away. I was too young to acknowledge it or understand it. I was shortly adopted after that, and you know, my upbringing was in a loving home where my parents gave me everything that I needed. I never went without. 2 older brothers, loving home, only 3 schools, so very, very what, like, I guess society, or what I'd think would deem normal. You know, nothing out of the ordinary. But I know throughout my childhood, I always felt like an outsider. You know, I never ever felt a part of. I tried to be different people throughout my school career, and all I ever wanted was people to accept me. You know, I'm the type of person, I can sit in a room, and if there was people laughing on that side of the corner, I'd think they were laughing about me. I definitely went throughout my life being the most important person. Everything was always about me, and definitely self-obsessed. I think for me, when I was probably in senior primary, that's when I became very, very self-aware. Like, I had these ideas of what I wear would make you think differently about me. Who I hung around would make you think differently about me. So I kept on throughout, you know, that period of my life, trying to fix those things in order to be more acceptable to the people around me. Incredibly insecure, and I took rejection very, very personally from a very, very young age. I don't like being rejected. I want to be accepted by everyone, which is just completely unrealistic. But all those feelings and emotions is what I think really drove me to drink, because I needed to fix that. Living with me sober is completely overwhelming without any form of solution. And, you know, like from a young age of 16, in order to go up to girls and be confident, I needed to put alcohol in my body. It was that simple, you know. It was, as soon as I drank, I became more confident. I became what I like to call at ease, you know, at ease with everything around me and with life. So I guess school changed at a point in my life. You know, I always wanted to do well in school, and there was a period in my life where I did do well. But when I started drinking, everything took a backseat. I don't know, you know, some people talk about, you know, periods in their life where they had drinking under control. When I was 16 or 18 years old, I didn't want to control my drinking. I wanted to get drunk, you know. I drank to get drunk. From the first time I started to drink, I also don't remember the first time I drank. It's not as though my life changed that day. But what I do know is that it definitely became a solution. It became a way that I could live life and be at ease with life. I guess what I can acknowledge today is the progression of this disease, because when I was 16 years old, before I started drinking, I didn't think to myself that I'd ever land up in a rehab at, I don't know how old I was, 23, 24 years old. That was completely beyond me, The fact that I'd land up in a rehab at that age was I always looked at an alcoholic as the person who's lying in a gutter, who can't pay bills, who drinks alone at home. Those were all my ideas of what an alcoholic is. And what I came to realize through my experience is that that has nothing to do with being alcoholic, because when I eventually came into recovery, I remember actually Brian laughed because I had a nice phone. I didn't lose it all when I came into treatment. I was just holding on to it, but I didn't lose it all. I still had my job. I still had my car. I had all those material things. I was paying bills, like my credit card with my overdraft with my credit card. I just shuffled money, but I was paying all of them. I had a credit rating that was okay. My job was a mess, but I still had it, I guess the progression for me went from drinking once a month to drinking twice a month to every weekend to twice a weekend, and then I'd do it during the week. And I found that I would do that, and that was my pattern. And then eventually I'd get to the point where I was drinking every day. And as I've learned, I can't live life drinking every day. Society and me drinking every day, it doesn't work, I end up battling to go to work, and I end up doing stupid things, fighting with family, fighting with friends. So I'll get to this turning point in my life, and I'll decide, really decide, hey, I'm not drinking again for about 2 months. Get to stop, And I'd stop, and then eventually I'd get to that point where life was so overwhelming, and I'd start drinking again. And that pattern, from the age of 18 to 23, that kept on happening, and it got quicker and quicker. That progression got quicker for me. I could stop drinking, I just couldn't stay stopped, I ended up doing some really stupid things in those days. I really was the type of person that I would never ask someone for advice. I knew it all. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had this whole idea of where my life was going. I had it all sorted. I had a plan. And for a period, everything was kind of going according to my plan. But as life works out, things started not working out the way I wanted it to, and eventually my plan started falling apart. I understand this is an AA meeting. My experience is also using drugs, and I'll try my best talking about drinking only, but that is my experience. And I ended up finding any ways and means to use the way that I needed to use in order to function in my life. And I ended up making some really stupid decisions. And at the time, I really, truly believed they were good ideas. That's looking back. At the time, it seemed pretty normal to deal drugs if I need money, and I ended up loaning a car to a dealer as an investment, to get money back. He ended up crossing the border, getting shot at in my car, and it landed up in a panel beater. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, and it seemed pretty normal. It seemed like seemed pretty normal for me. I often in recovery, I wake up some days and I wake up and I think to myself, like, what was I thinking, you know? But at the time, it seemed like good ideas, you know? But I was very, very self-reliant. I never spoke to anyone about my problems. For me, I guess when I was coming towards the end of my alcoholism, active alcoholism, I really didn't think anyone else was going through the stuff that I was going through, and I didn't think that anyone could understand what I was going through. I didn't want to tell anyone what was going on. I lied about everything. It's like I would go to work and I'd be one person, but at night I'd be someone totally different, you know, and the weekends I'd be someone totally different. It was like there were two people living my life, you know. It was completely separate because I was trying to be professional during the day and have a good career and like buy all nice things. And then on the weekends I like was binging and doing stupid shit, you know. For me, it all came to an end when eventually all the things that separated me from what I thought was an alcoholic started happening. Like, I always had these ideas that if I don't drink at home alone, then I'm not an alcoholic. If I don't drink during the morning, I'm not alcoholic. If I don't use alone, I'm not alcoholic. If I can go to work every day, I'm not an alcoholic. And I held on to that stuff, and I fought to not do those things just to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem. I think like the greatest obsession I've ever had in my life was that someday, somehow, I'd be able to use like a normal person. And like I literally fought that till the bitter ends. I did not want to acknowledge that I couldn't use like normal people. And I saw a lot of my friends, they would get into a relationship and stop jawling and stop drinking, and like they just carried on life. Things came right. They progressed in their careers. You know, some other guys started gymming and they sorted their lives out. Some people got jobs, they sorted their lives out. And I tried all these things and it didn't work for me. You know, I tried just drinking and not taking drugs. That didn't work. I tried malt stout. Mother's milk. I remember the bullshit that went on in my head, you know, like really truly believing that. Like for someone, it's actually mad because someone who, in my experience, I've never been able to moderate or control my drinking, I had all the answers on how to do it. You know, it was this constant fight within myself. And I built up you know, this idea of who I was. I wanted to be really hardcore. I think that was like my thing. I wanted to be like feared. It's mad. And I ended up, you know, doing the gymming thing, doing steroids, getting all big and hanging out with hardcore people. I built this idea of who I thought I was in this club in Durban, where like I knew all the bouncers, all the people that worked there, the owner, like I was like, you know, had special access and I was like never paid at the door, and you know, I really thought I was pretty cool. I really did. I thought I was cool, you know. And I'm going to share this because this is who I am. I ended up in a club, the same club, and there was this guy that I was dealing to, and he had sworn at me like a week before, and because I was so arrogant, he walked in and I started to fight with him. He was 18 years old and he beat me up. So, you know, all these people that knew me in this place, like this big book talks about ego being smashed, that was my ego being smashed. You know, that idea of who I thought I was completely ripped apart in one evening. In like 5 minutes. I ended up with this big bubble on my head. And I was scared because it's now like these guys were from the Bluff, I was from the Bluff. You know, it's very easy for someone to give police tip-offs. So like everything had like, my plans, everything who I thought I was had completely fallen apart. A week before that, I had gone out on the Friday night and I couldn't wake up for work on the Saturday. And I thought to myself, I always take these days off, like Monday, Saturday. So like this time I was going to take like 4 days off because then it seemed legitimate. It seemed real. And I went to a real hospital, got a real doctor's note. So like it was a good cover-up, The reason why I talk about this is, for me, the boxes that I checked of not going to work started to happen. In that last 2 weeks that I was working, I think I was at work for 2 days, in 2 weeks. I went missing, So yeah, that was the first of the 2 weeks. This was sort of the ending for me. And I sat there, and I always share this because I think it's a pretty cool experience, and it has nothing to do with the tarot cards, but this is my experience. I sat at a dealer's house using, and I got these cards in front of me. The first one that I opened says, "Stop your drug addiction." The second one, the slogan at the bottom says, "Ask for help." And the third one says, "Go tell your mom." I don't know about you, but for me, well, at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, but yeah, it's pretty crazy when I look back. My experience has been that a month before that, I remember this point where I was standing, looking at myself in the mirror, thinking, how the hell have I become this person? And although I did not believe in God, I was crying out for help. And this is the way that I got the help I needed. So anyway, when I got into that fight, it seemed like a pretty logical thing to follow what those cards had said. So I ended up going to my parents' house on the Sunday. I told them everything. I had ended up stealing money and a whole bunch of dodgy stuff. So I'm sitting there in front of my parents and telling them all this. My dad's breaking down. And for the first time in my life, I truly wanted to. I know that day, I truly, for the first time, wanted to stop. Not stop for 5 days or a week, but stop for it to end. And we had this plan. My parents were going to help me financially, fix everything. And I was meant to meet them on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. I can't remember the details. I sometimes used to share about the next day I went to a dealer with crying. I don't know if that was true, but I remember that day I went out and I scored, and I went out and I used, and it was the first time that I truly did not want to use, and I couldn't say no. It was completely beyond me. It wasn't an emotional don't want to use, it was a true, I don't want to use, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't want anything to do with it, and I couldn't stop. I ended up in a 3-day binge. My parents didn't know where I stayed because I was hiding and I didn't want people to bust me. I was the type of person that would drive in my car, look in the rear view mirror. I stayed in this, I don't know what you call it, the circle, cul-de-sac, I think it's called. And, circle houses in the middle. And I used to drive around until there were no cars, no one in sight, and then I would pull into the gate. And sometimes I'd go around that place 3 times. Very, very paranoid. And I walked out, it was my mom's birthday. I was off my face, and they had found me through someone else. I don't even know how they, through a girl that I was seeing at the time. And I walked outside and I saw them, and I was I just couldn't do it anymore. Again, during this whole period, I had all these great ideas of saving my job, and I knew that if I went to a treatment center, my company couldn't fire me. So that seemed like the next best bet. So that was my reasons for going into treatment. So I eventually had that period off, and that Saturday I landed up in my boss's office in tears, and I told him, I have a problem, I need help. Part of it was to save my job. He's a very clever man. He made me sign a letter, and it said that I would go to treatment for a period of 30 days. I had to do that 30-day treatment. And the other condition was that I'd report back to work on the 1st of November. So it was you have to stay a maximum and a minimum of 30 days. That's it. So I signed that letter and it stated that I would resign if I did not do those two things. And to me at the time it made sense, because for me it was about getting the alcohol out of my system. If I could just get a period in my life where I could get the booze out, get the chemicals out, I would then be able to morally decide that I don't want to use. Because that was my idea, is that somehow there was this chemical dependency that if I could just get that off, get my body clean, that I would then be able to like say no. Like those people go out there and say no to drugs. I landed up going to a treatment center, and my experience was listening to other people and how they had come into recovery, and then they had tried the 30-day period in treatment and it didn't work out for them. I heard about people who had gotten into a relationship in the first year and it didn't work for them. They landed up relapsing. I heard about all these stories of people who had not finished the steps and ended up relapsing. I've heard about people who didn't make this their priority and ended up relapsing. So what I came to realize very, very quickly within about a week is from this idea that I'm only going to have a clean period in a rehab for 30 days and then go sort my life out, to acknowledging that I couldn't do it alone. I think that was the first time in my life that I've truly acknowledged that I need the support of other people, I need the support of this fellowship in order to stay sober. So I ended up speaking to my boss and telling him that I couldn't come back to work. So I literally, in my mind, I had resigned from the company, and I was willing, like I come into meetings and sometimes they talk about 90 meetings in 90 days and all this sort of stuff, and that was not what I heard. When I came into recovery, I heard about any lengths, and whatever you put before your recovery or lose before you recover. That was the message that was carried to me. I was in treatment with some guys that had been in treatment centers like for 10 years, in and out, The first meeting that I ever went to, it was important for me because I was the type of person that I'd go up to people that were religious and I'd have an argument with them. Like, it was fun. I used to love that shit, Stand in front of someone, they're religious, and have a nice argument because, like, I was all-knowing, all-powerful. And I'd sit in front of someone who had their life together, they were happy. There I was miserable, but I was telling them that God didn't exist. And that's who I was. So the first meeting I came to, I heard these words like God, and I was like, oh, where have my parents booked me into, that was the first thing that came to mind. Like, out of all the places I could have gone to, why am I in this place where they're talking about God? Like, surely there's another way out. So I walk outside, and I'm very, very grateful that I was honest. I went to someone and I said to him, how's this going to work for me if I don't believe in God? And thankfully that person's pretty straightforward, and he said it won't. And that was the answer that I needed to get. No bullshit. And that's been my experience, is that I need some form of higher power. I didn't believe in the beginning. I didn't believe for the first 2 weeks. But for me, it was the first time in my life where I was willing to believe. And for me, that was like the key ingredient, was just being willing to look at it and be open-minded. I think like a lot of the groups that were at that treatment center were all like spiritual groups, and it was a totally different take. And what I really like about this program and this fellowship is like, it's a God of my own understanding. It's not how my parents believe it, not how society believes it. It doesn't have to be religious. It's just, God as I understand Him. I still don't like the hymn part. So that was the start of my journey in recovery, and I kind of look at the last 3 years and I'm blown away because, there were a lot of things that I heard in the beginning about secrets keeping you sick. There were 3 secrets that I didn't want to tell, and I prayed about it. That was also a foreign thing for me to pray, but I tried because I was willing. I didn't want to go back. You know, that's as simple as it is for me. I guess for me, believing in a higher power is acknowledging that it doesn't end at me, you know, and that's as simple as I keep it, because for a long time I always believed that it ended at me. There was nothing greater than myself. The beginning I made my higher power sponsor, fellowship, you know, all those sort of things. So yeah, I think about those secrets, I ended up praying about that stuff, and in the period of about a week, it was crazy because there were different people that told me those things that they had done, and those were the secrets that I was wanting to hold on to, and they were like sharing with me like it was nothing, you know. So I'm very, very grateful because I managed to get completely honest with someone in my first step. My first step, it's weird because I've always had these motives in my recovery. It's like, you know, I came into treatment to save my job, but I ended up staying for the right reasons. I remember sitting in a leaving group, and this guy was getting a leaving group, and I always share about this because my first step was like a game. It was this, we shared the same sponsor, so obviously wanted to be the better sponsee. I did. And we sat there, and everyone, and it came to the end where the counsellor said he's never seen someone bring everything back to himself so much, you know. And I was like, I'll show you there's someone out there that can do it better. So that was what my first step was all about. It was being better than this guy. That was it. But it's amazing because God will do for me what I cannot do for myself. And one thing I could not do is take responsibility. I could not. I was completely blind to my part. My whole life I went through my life blaming people, looking outside of myself as the problem. And it's amazing because it's like my higher power used my character defect as a way to actually get me through that stuff. And I remember sitting in my first step, owning everything, you know, looking at my part and really being the best sponsee. And I had to own that in the halfway house. You know, it's funny for me. But I guess like the reason why I share it is because my experience has been is there's no perfect way to work this program. I had a faulty step 5, but I'm still sitting here today because I owned it, you know. I came into treatment for the wrong reasons, but I'm still sitting here today because I owned it, and I stayed for the right reasons. Step 6 and 7 is just like a continuous basis, you know. I was chatting to my friends coming here, and like the most difficult relationship that I've ever had is dealing with me, you know. Like it's really unbearable some days because dealing with me and my perceptions and my beliefs is probably the most difficult thing, and like changing that and getting to that point, like the only thing that makes me change is pain, because I continuously get to these points in my life where something becomes overwhelming, and then I finally have to realize that I can't change my circumstances, I can only change myself through working this program. And that's been like, I know the first 2 years of my recovery, that was like my pattern, It was just like continuously getting to this point of needing to change who I was in order to cope in life. So yeah, a whole bunch of things happened in treatment where like I look back, I was driving down today, and it's weird because my boss cut in front of me, and I joined onto the freeway as he passed, and I had this sudden realization to the fact that I would not be here today if it wasn't for the people in my life, you know. Like my career has progressed. The same company that I was in, that man phoned me, it was December 2013, I wanted to stay a 4th month in treatment, and my parents had paid for 2, medical aid had paid for 1, and I ran out of options because I went to the company, I asked them, can I extend the medical aid? At that point, I thought they had taken me off the books, like I had resigned, because I hadn't heard from him for 3 months. He ended up, after everything fell apart, I eventually let go. And the day after, like I'd truly handed it over, he phoned my sponsor and asked to speak to me. And so I phoned him and I spoke to him, and he's like, so when are you coming back? You know, that's what I believe is grace, and that's what I believe is the power of this program and living this way of life, because like that moment, I can't take credit for anything that I have today, because if it wasn't for that moment of grace, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today, you know. There's so many of those moments in my recovery. And I said to him, well, I'd like to come back, but I need to stay another month. And like, you have to remember, this is a man who gave me 1 month, you know. He's now given me 3, and he just said to me, yeah, that's cool. When are you getting out? So I said, like, around the 20th. He's like, yeah, I'll just come out, take a week, and then come back on the 1st, you know. So, like, that was amazing, because it helped me with so many things. It got me, because my medical aid stayed, so I obviously got January paid by medical aid. I had a job to come out to. So yeah, that was pretty incredible. Yeah. I don't know, like my life today compared to how it was when I first came in is like completely different, you know. This last year has really been like living sober, and my first 18 months, I don't know so much about happy, joyous and free. I was miserable, bearing it, going to meetings like 6 times a week, staying in the halfway house. Like I did everything I needed to do, but I could not find like this length of happy, joyous and free. And I still don't know what changed, but it changed, you know. By continuously doing what I needed to do, something happened. It eventually happened where I eventually, you know, I remember there was a period like of 6 months where I was just like, good. There were no problems, I was chilled with life, everything was okay. Nothing in terms of like my exterior circumstances changed, but like I was at peace with life, you know. I'm going all over the place because it's just like there's so much to share about, you know. There's been so many moments in my recovery where I've gotten to the point where I'm on my knees praying, asking for help. And like I had this period at work where it was like, I got promoted, so the idea was, you know, you get promoted and everything's good, you know. I got promoted and I didn't earn commission for 6 months, you know. And I did everything that I needed to do to earn commission. Like I worked hard, I worked long hours, I worked hard, I tried to do everything to the best of my ability, and it just didn't work out, you know. So I got to this point where I got on my knees and I prayed for help. And the next day I get called into my boss's office and he's like, I'm moving you to Hillcrest. So I was like, that's it, I'm resigning, you know. In my mind, I didn't tell him, thank God, I didn't tell him, but in my mind, I was resigning. So on that day, I ended up phoning 2 of my friends, I phoned my sponsor, I phoned my mom, because like that's been the pattern, speak to people, ask for help, and 3 people told me to resign. 1 person, which was Sean, told me not to resign until Monday, like just let the weekend pass. So I didn't resign because I could have a car for the weekend. See how this, yeah. So I didn't do it, and I went up and I faced my fears and I did everything that I needed to do. I did everything against what I felt was best for me. I did what other people were trying to help me, you know, and I just went to meetings and carried on doing service, and it's amazing because, like, I don't say this for any other reason, but because I want to give hope, is that, like, in this last 6 months, I earned more money than I did the entire of last year. Like, the full financial year, you know, like, that changed. So I started earning commission. I'm pretty much 90% of the time happy at work. Like, I don't go into work wanting to resign every day, which is good. There's a difference though. Last year was looking at everything outside of myself as the problem, and this year has been looking at myself and how I can change. What is my perception that is wrong? How do I need to change? sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. For me, it's incredibly slowly. But I don't need to use today. You know what I mean? I don't have to use. And I've had some painful moments dealing with myself in recovery, but like I've never ever had that point where I think to myself, I have to use, otherwise I can't make it out of this, you know. For me, using might give me temporary relief, but I know that I'm an alcoholic, and what I learned about this disease is in the doctor's opinion, which talks about that twofold disease. And I understand that today is that there's two parts. There's a mental obsession, there's a mental problem with me, and then there's a difference. You know, my dad can have I always share this because my dad amazes me. He has a 6-pack of the same beer I used to drink in his fridge. He goes to the fridge, he doesn't think to himself, I don't need to drink today. He goes to the fridge and he gets a milkshake and he carries on with his day. You know, whereas I would have gone to the fridge, I would have convinced myself that I need a milkshake. I'd have the milkshake and I'd be back at that fridge within 10 minutes drinking the beer. Then I'd have one beer and I'd say to myself, okay, only one, and then I'd have two. And then I'd end up going to a club and I'd come home at about 6 in the morning. Like that was the way it worked for me. My dad doesn't have that. So that's where I acknowledge that is the difference. That's what makes me alcoholic. You know, the fact that I didn't land up in the gutter doesn't mean that I'm not alcoholic. You know, what makes me different is that my dad can drink a certain way, I can't. My life is good today, and like sometimes I force that out in shares, because I want to be grateful and I want to love life. But like truly today, like I'm very, very happy and content with where my life is. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that has happened. But I guess for me, like there's a way out. There's a way out. There's finally a way out for me. And that no matter what, if I keep on coming back and I keep on doing what I need to do, I keep on working this program and speaking to my sponsor, like I have gotten through everything that I've needed to in my life. And what I battled with in the first year is not even an issue for me anymore. You know, what I battled with last year is disappeared, you know. I battle with new things today, which is okay. So I'm going to end it at that. Thanks for letting me share.